we will have a much clearer picture of the college football playoff race after this week with two massive games: Oregon, Penn State, Alabama, Georgia, and then a bunch of other big games. This is a huge weekend in college football. I was actually looking ahead to week 6, and week 6 is going to seem boring compared to this week because we have loaded games this week. And again, it's going to tell us a lot about this playoff picture. But as of right now, not a lot of changes for me. I have made a few changes, a few tweaks to my predictions, and we'll jump right into it. And again, not going to spend a lot of time on the games once we fill out our bracket, but I will go through all the way to the championship just for fun. But again, keep in mind, the main point of this video is to give you the 12 teams that I think are going to be in the college football playoff. I get a lot of comments about, well, I don't see that team beating that team, or that's really not even what this video is about. Again, I just kind of quickly go through those matchups. But let's begin with the bracket, and we're going to start actually at the top. So I thought about this after last week. I think I mentioned it in the video. I think Georgia probably gets the 1 seed. I think Georgia right now, if they can beat Alabama, they're at least going to be 11-1, possibly even 12-0, and I do think they're going to win the SEC championship, especially with Florida struggling, because that's a team that I picked them to lose to in the preseason. I still think they might lose to Auburn on the road. So again, this Alabama game really, if a win, I think locks Georgia into that 1 spot, but a loss, and maybe they're not there. And that means I'm going to have Penn State number 2. So I think Penn State loses to Ohio State in the regular season, but then they win the Big Ten championship. So they, again, when you compare the Georgia and Penn State resumes, I think Georgia would have the better resume. And so that's why I think Georgia goes to 1, Penn State to 2. I think both teams are sitting there as conference champions with just 1 loss. And then we go to number 3 team, and that's Ohio State. So I think Ohio State's only loss is going to come, or I think they will only have 1 loss in the regular season. And then depending on tiebreakers, depending on how things go, they might be in the Big Ten championship game, and that could be a second loss, but I don't think they would really get penalized much for that. And maybe they're 11-1, maybe they don't go to the Big Ten championship. We'll see how all that shakes out. The Michigan game is one you can look at as a potential loss. They got Washington this week. That's going to be a tricky game. So I don't think they go 12-0. I think they lose somewhere, even though I do have them beating Penn State. And then at number 4, I'm sticking with Miami. I think Miami, they'll trip up. I think they lose a game, but I think that they should win the rest of their games. And, as I talk about Miami, I'm thinking about Florida State. Is Florida State also going to be in this playoff picture? Because I'll be honest, I haven't put a lot of thought, and even though I've got them in my top 10, I haven't put a lot of thought about Florida State possibly getting to, I don't know if 10-2 would be enough. It probably would be because of the win over Alabama, as long as Alabama finishes pretty strong. So I'm telling you, it's going to be tough. We're probably going to have 10-2 teams left out, and possibly 9-3 teams in over 10-2 teams. But I think, again, after this week, things will be a little bit more clear. Let's go to and speaking of Florida State, I do think they probably lose at least a couple of games. But again, I want to see them play. Even this game against Virginia, I think is going to tell us a lot. I think we learn a lot about Florida State on Friday night, because right now it's all based off of that one game. And was that just a great performance, or are they really that good? And I really want to find that out. But as of now, I'm just not sure. Anyways, this is supposed to be about Miami. Miami, I think they will get to the ACC championship, probably 1 loss, and win that game. And that gets them into the Orange Bowl as the number 4 seed. Number 5 seed, I've got Oregon, 10-2 or 11-1. That seems to be the most likely scenario for this team. Now, if they beat Penn State, obviously that's going to change things. Then we're talking maybe Oregon, Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. Maybe Penn State drops to number 5 if they lose a couple of games, or maybe even lower if they don't get a big win on the resume. So Oregon at number 5. Again, this is a huge game. I cannot wait to see both of these games on Saturday night. It's going to be great. Great football with these two matchups. Number 6, LSU. I think this team probably gets to 10-2, and then SEC championship more than likely. It could come down to whoever wins between them and Texas A&M. But again, that team will play Georgia in the SEC championship. But I'm going with Georgia. And again, I don't think teams are going to get penalized a whole lot for losing in conference championship games, especially if you lose to the 1 and 2 seed. So LSU at number 6. Let's move on to number 7. The number 7 seed for me is Texas Tech. So I've got this team winning the Big 12. What I saw from them against Utah, I don't know if anyone in the Big 12 is really on their level. Now, I don't think they're going to go undefeated. I think it's a tough conference, and I think they play Arizona State on the road, so that could be a tough one. So maybe they go 11-1, then win the Big 12 championship. Without a strong schedule, though, I still think maybe a 10-2 LSU is over Texas Tech, even if they just have the one loss. So that'll be something to look at. And then we go to number 8. I think that's going to be Texas A&M. So Texas A&M more than likely at 10-2 in that number 8 spot. And perhaps Texas A&M is at 7 even. If they're 10-2, again, it's going to be really, really tough to compare these 2-loss teams, like SEC and Big Ten 2-loss teams compared to ACC and Big 12 1-loss teams. And then also looking at the 3-loss SEC and Big Ten teams compared to 2-loss Big 12 and ACC teams. There will be some very tough, I think, decisions that the committee is going to have to make. But I've got A&M at number 8, and then I've got Oklahoma at number 9. John Mateer being out does make me worry, but they've got a bye week this week. Then they've got Kent State. I don't know that he'll be back for the Texas game, but I think this team can at least get to 9-3. And if they lose a game or a couple of games with him out, but then he comes back and they finish strong, I think the committee's going to put them in. So I've got Oklahoma at number 9, probably going 9-3. Same thing with Texas. I think Texas finishes 9-3. And again, I have these two teams over some 2-loss teams. I just think that's the way it's going to go. I mean, you look at Texas. Let's say they lose to Oklahoma and their losses come to Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Georgia. I mean, you're talking about losing to 3 playoff teams. Now, will they have enough wins on their resume to get here? That's going to be interesting. And again, there's going to be some tough decisions that the committee is going to have to make. But that's just kind of the way I'm leaning right now. I will reevaluate this every week, and maybe we'll make some changes to some of these comparisons. But, you know, that's where I've got it right now. Number 11, Notre Dame. I think this team wins out. I think they're good enough to do that. The USC game is really the toughest game I think left for them. Besides this weekend, Arkansas is going to be tough on the road. Of course, if they lose that game, they're out. There is no chance, 0% chance that Notre Dame gets into the college football playoff if they lose to Arkansas. It is not happening. You would have 3 losses. You would have really no chance for a big win. Arkansas would probably be looked at as a bad loss. There's no way they're getting in. I don't care if we get chaos. That's not going to be enough to. I mean, it would take a huge amount of chaos for Notre Dame to get in. So they've got to win against Arkansas, and they've got to win out. That's the key for Notre Dame. What's going to be interesting, though, is comparing Notre Dame to Indiana, because I think Indiana goes 10-2, and I do not have them in the playoff, and that's where I had it in the preseason, because their schedule is just not. You know, they need Illinois, and assuming they beat Iowa, they need those 2 teams to be good. I don't know if that's going to happen. And if they lose to the 2 good teams that they play, I don't think the committee's going to put them in. We saw them get penalized last year for a similar schedule. They did get in, but remember, they had just 1 loss. This would be different with 2. But if they're really impressive, maybe they're in over Notre Dame, or maybe they're in, maybe they don't put Oklahoma and Texas with 3 losses in. Again, it's going to be very interesting to see what the committee does. I just think the way this season has already gone and the way it's going to go, there's going to be a lot of controversy. And then at number 12, I'm going with South Florida. I know they lost to Miami, but they've shown the potential. I thought about Tulane, but then they didn't look great against Ole Miss. So I think South Florida is the team that gets it done. I think maybe they go 10-2, they slip up somewhere and then win the American Championship. So that's who I've got now. That's a tough one because there's so many options, but that's who I'm going to go with for now. So quickly, we'll go through the games. Texas A&M, Oklahoma. John Mateer has the game of his life. They upset A&M on the road. Then I've got Oregon beating South Florida. Texas Tech versus Texas. That would be a good one. I do think Arch Manning will find his way as the season goes along. A young Texas team, but a talented Texas team. They can match up with Texas Tech up front, and they win this game on the road. LSU Notre Dame, how fun would that be? Brian Kelly facing his old team. I think LSU at home is just too tough. I've got LSU winning this game. Then we got Georgia, Oklahoma. Going to go with the Dogs here. This team is they're really good again this year. Oregon versus Miami. Boy, this is a tough one. I mean, flip a coin. I think the game being in Florida in the Orange Bowl could be the difference. Miami wins this one. Texas versus Penn State. A game that a lot of people had as the national championship in the preseason. This will be a huge game in the Rose Bowl. But you guys know I've had Penn State since the preseason. I'm going to stick with them. Unless something happens on Saturday when they play Oregon that changes my mind, I'm probably going to keep sticking with Penn State. LSU, Ohio State. This would be a really good game. I could see this one maybe going either way. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes, though. Then we got Georgia versus Miami. And again, if these games were if we actually had the playoff field, I would spend a lot more time analyzing these games, breaking them down, and talking about them more in my video. But this is all hypothetical. Georgia, Miami, I think Georgia too much. Penn State, already talked about it. That's the team I'm going to stick with. So how about Penn State over Georgia in the national championship? That's going to be my prediction this week. And like I said, I've stuck with Penn State since the preseason. I'm going to possibly make a new pick depending on how the game goes against Oregon on Saturday night. So that is a huge game for me to evaluate both of those teams against really good competition. And then an Alabama-Georgia game. What if Alabama wins? And then we probably got to put Alabama back in the playoff. So this is a huge week. Enjoy all the great games. And really, it starts tonight. 2 huge games on Friday night. Virginia, Florida State, and then TCU versus Arizona State. Those games could be really, really good, and they could have a big impact on the playoff picture as well. But give me your updated playoff predictions down in the comments below.